the name of God who loves us, God who once walked among us, and God who spurs us ever on. Amen. Foxes. My husband Barney and I enjoy putting out feeders and watching the birds who come to feast in our backyard. Perhaps it's a sign of our age. There are at least 2 foxes who visit, often several times a day, and we love seeing them. Their red coats are stunningly beautiful. They run through the yard like the sly creatures they're said to be. Sometimes when they come together, we can catch them at play. It may look like the peaceable kingdom out there, and yet we know why the foxes are there. They're looking for lunch, and they're not planning to eat the sunflower seeds that have dropped. The fox is prowling for whatever animal he might catch and kill and eat. When he visited at Christmas and watched the scene out our kitchen window, one of our grandchildren was very worried about the fate of the squirrels who scurry around the feeders. "I'm so afraid the fox is going to kill the cute squirrels," he lamented more than once. Today we hear of the sly fox, Herod Antipas, who's out to kill Jesus. The Pharisees, perhaps taking a friendly stance towards Jesus at this point, warn him about the looming danger. Jesus will not be deterred, no matter the risk to him. He has his face set toward Jerusalem as he has since the Transfiguration, and nothing, not even death threats, will stop him. Meanwhile, he is busy healing and casting out demons and inviting a reluctant audience to recognize him as the prophet he is. In a very unsettled world, he's inviting them to accept the gift of God's grace he's offering them. He cares deeply about Jerusalem. Luke mentions the city 90 times in his gospel. All the other New Testament writers combined mention it under 50 times. And so Jesus laments the fate of the city as her people fail to heed his teachings. He will weep over the city as he enters it just after his triumphal entry on Palm Sunday, lamenting that not even a few of her people recognize the things that make for peace. Nor did they recognize God when God visited the city in the person of Jesus. It's not often we see Jesus weeping or lamenting. And it seems to me those aren't tears of anger or frustration. His are tears of grief. Genuine grief that God's children have wandered so far from God's ways. They remain blind to who Jesus is and deaf to the message he brings. They remain unwilling to come under God's loving embrace as Jesus offers it so freely. Having referred to Herod as a fox, Jesus then compares himself to a mother hen. And we know what happens when the fox enters the hen house. What an unusual image the hen is of our Lord. Given all the animals in God's good creation, the hen is probably not the first I would think of as an image for God. But I love this feminine image of a mother who sees her role, her purpose in life, as one of loving and nurturing and protecting her children. It's one of my favorite images. I have a painting of it. It used to be in my study at St. Anne's, and it now lives in my kitchen. Thank you. It was painted as an ordination gift for me by our bishop, Susan Goff, and it's a reminder of my one and only time in the pulpit when I was a student at Virginia Seminary. My text for that day included this quote by Jesus as recorded in Matthew's Gospel. "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and yet you were not willing." In the picture, several of the chicks are tucked safely under their mother's wings. 2 of them seem to be headed for her protective offering, and one appears to be walking away. Set on a hillside on the western slopes of the Mount of Olives, across the Kidron Valley from the city of Jerusalem, sits a small chapel. It's called Dominus Flevit, Latin for God wept. Its name is taken from Luke's gospel, which contains not just this one, but also a second account of Jesus' grief over the loss of Jerusalem. According to tradition, it was on this spot that Jesus wept over the city. The chapel was designed in the shape of a teardrop, and the wall behind the altar is glass. And so the view of the holy city looking out over the dome of the rock is breathtaking. On the floor of the chapel is a mosaic of a white hen with a golden halo around her head. Her red comb resembles a crown. You know, I haven't spent much time on a farm, but that red comb sounds more like a rooster than a hen to me. And I wonder if the mosaic artist took some liberty with the text, knowing a rooster does have a few ways to protect himself. He has sharp spikes on the back of his feet, and he doesn't hesitate to use them if anyone tries to bother him. He can also peck pretty hard, and he doesn't wait to be pecked at first. It's much harder to gather the eggs in a hen house, I'm told, when the rooster is there. The rest of the details of the mosaic are much more hen-like. Her wings are spread really wide to shelter the pale yellow chicks gathered around her feet. There are 7 of them. Their eyes are black dots. Their beaks are orange dots, just a little bit bigger. They look happy to be there. And the hen looks fiercely determined, ready to puff out her breast in an attempt to defy anyone who tries to come near her babies. We note that Jesus didn't compare himself to a rooster. He compared himself to a brooding hen who's totally committed to protecting her young. She has no talons and not much of a beak to protect herself or her chicks. All she can do to protect her babies is to shield them with her own body. Forming a circle around the mosaic are red words written in Latin, translated, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. The last phrase, you were not willing, is set outside the circle in a pool of red under the chick's feet. You can Google this poignant image, and I encourage you to do it, to spend a little time with this picture. A hen really has no way to protect herself, and much as she would like to, she can't protect those she loves. As with us human beings, all she can do is open her arms, knowing she can't make anyone walk into them. Opening her arms puts her in a very vulnerable position, wings spread, breast exposed. In the Hebrew scriptures, we read about many animals far better equipped to protect themselves and their young. The mighty eagle, the stealthy leopard, and the fierce lion who frightens away those who might harm him just with his mighty roar. The hen has no such advantages. All she can do is stand between her chicks and those who would harm them. She has no fangs, no claws, no strong muscles, no great stature. Only her body stands between her chicks and the fox who would kill them. Jesus will choose to be the hen, though. He too will offer his own body to save the lives of God's chicks. A woman who grew up on a farm in North Carolina tells the story of a hen that demonstrates the animal's sacrificial care. On a cold winter's night, she went out to check on the animals in the barn. It was a crisp night. The full moon was shining brightly, but it was very cold. The water in the horse's trough had frozen, and that didn't happen very often in this coastal area. As she went looking for something to use to chop the ice, the woman noticed a hen huddled near the trough. There were several biddies tucked under her wings. The mother hen had turned her face, her whole frail body, into the icy wind that was blowing through the barn door. And she had stretched out her wings, wings that were undoubtedly very cold and very tired at this point. Stretch them out for the sake of her children. When the woman returned to the barn in the morning, she discovered the mother hen's cold, stiff body. But under the protection of her wings, the chicks had survived. What a poignant picture of the depth of Jesus' care for us, of his willingness to give his life for ours. There's a detail in the picture Jesus paints for us that we need to pay attention to. The hen was there, ready and waiting to protect her chicks, no matter the cost to her. But the chicks had to make the decision to come to her. Maybe she chased a few around the barn. Surely some had come more willingly than others. It's quite possible there were still chicks wandering around that cold North Carolina barn that night. They hadn't come under their mother's protective wings, and it likely had cost them their lives. The chicks who were there, huddled up against their mother, were there because they'd allowed themselves to be gathered up and protected. They'd quit fighting what they had no control over to begin with. "You do it, Mom," they said. A gift is offered, but we have to be ready. We have to be willing to receive it. Jesus' face is set toward Jerusalem. There will be no turning back for him, despite the warning from the Pharisees. He knows what he has to do, and he will do it. In a few short weeks, he will stretch out his protective wings for us as he stretches out his arms of love on the hard wood of the cross, inviting each and every one of us to come under the protection of his loving and protective embrace. This Lent, the invitation is there for us to come under the protection of God's loving wing. Jesus tells us the people of Jerusalem were not willing. What about us? Are we willing? Will you scurry readily to those extended wings? Will I need a little more time to make my way there? What about those who continue to wander around the barn? Is there any way we might offer them a message of encouragement? There's another charge for us as well, to be hands for others, to offer our wings for those who are hurting, those who need love and comfort and protection, and perhaps direction. Who might need the protection of your wing? Hens and chicks. That's what we're called to be this Lenten season. May we be ready and willing to be gathered under God's loving embrace. May we be ready and willing to offer care and comfort to those around us. May our Lenten journey lead us ever more closely to that place under God's wings. Amen.